Betting weekly because we win. That is our motto. Sometimes we win, sometimes we don't win. Don't give us the bird, don't give us your stink eye. We try our best and we're successful. Come watch our show. That River sponsor. It's time to start. Enjoy the show.
Welcome in, everyone, to Betting Weekly Live. It is Friday, the 11th of July, and I'm delighted to be joined by James Eastham, who has come in today to help preview the final of the Club World Cup, which is coming up over the weekend. James, it's the culmination of the tournament. Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Steve. Great to be here for the big game on Sunday. So we're looking at that today. And yeah, culmination of the tournament, which has been much discussed both before it started and during the tournament. I think a lot of people out there might have seen the comments from Arsene Wenger, who's obviously working with FIFA these days, saying what a fantastic tournament it's been. I think we'll have differing views on that. And I think it will need some time for the dust to settle before we make any conclusions about how useful, how entertaining, how important this tournament has been and will become. But I've enjoyed it. It's been good. Some of the football's been entertaining, decent quality in difficult conditions. And we've got what I think is a fascinating final in that we've got clearly the best team in the world right now in Paris Saint-Germain who've made it there against an outsider. You've got to say Chelsea these days are an outsider. Not many people thought they'd get this far. So I think FIFA will be pleased with how it's gone. Unpredictable finalists, if you look at both of them. And a really interesting game in store, I think, Steve. So plenty to discuss today.
Well, I'm not going to argue with Arsene Wenger. For me, one of the greatest ever managers that there's ever been, head coach, whatever you want to call him. I actually think that the gap between him and Sir Alex Ferguson is closer than what a lot of people think. He was absolutely revolutionary with what he did. And he comes out with some outlandish stuff sometimes, but yeah, I think the way his mind operates. He's often well ahead of the trend, ahead of everyone else. It's interesting because Jurgen Klopp was slagging off the competition earlier, and the players' conditioning and stuff is a thing. But I think it's been a good tournament overall.
Yeah. Well, this is it, Steve. I think I don't know what viewers, listeners think. Very interested to hear what people have felt about this tournament, but different views there from two supremely high-profile names in the managerial game, both massively respected figures. Obviously, they're coming at slightly different angles in that Jurgen Klopp is still working on the club side, obviously not as a head coach anymore, but working on the club side for Red Bull. That would be his focus. Wenger, obviously, these days is consulting really for FIFA. But I tend to agree. And I think, going into the new European season, I actually think this tournament puts a lot of pressure on the Champions League now, because the Champions League has been sort of untouchable as the globe's premier club competition. Now you've got to say, well, is it? And I think it does put pressure on people in Europe to justify that status now, because yes, we've got two European teams in the final, not a massive surprise in that, but we've had really interesting and in some cases good performances at this tournament from teams outside Europe. So it's shaken things up. You've got to say it's shaken things up in the club game. It has changed the dynamics of it. And honestly, just from the point of view of how much this tournament has meant to fans and clubs outside Europe, I think you have to say two things. Number one, it has been a success. And number two, it's here to stay, because I think those other areas of the world, having been given this platform to perform on, they won't want to lose that now. And I think that's where the pressure for this tournament to probably grow in the future will come from. So I'm the same as you, Steve. I've enjoyed it. I've not watched it as closely as I might a World Cup, if you're to compare it with the nation team competition that it's sort of copying. But it's been great, and we've seen lots of positives. And as I say, it's led to a final, which I think on Sunday will be really, really interesting.
Are you up or down for the tournament? That's the question, James. You've given several winners out on it. So
well, do you know what? Yes, I've not done that many shows. I think the last, I think couple of things. One, I think the last show I was on with you, Steve, I went quite strong on Real Madrid to reach the semi-final. So that was a winning tip. People might remember, I think it was the same show. I sort of said to oppose Chelsea in their side of the draw. It was more of a lean than a pick. I felt the gap between Chelsea and the other teams in their side of the draw, which was when we got to the quarter-final stage, was Al Hilal, Fluminense, Palmeiras, that side of the draw. I didn't think the gap between Chelsea and the rest was that big. Obviously, Chelsea have kind of proved that wrong by getting to the final. So some winning picks, some losing picks. But I think going into this game, we all know what the situation is. We've got one super team who are just looking unbeatable, really unbeatable. It will take something really special, I think, from Chelsea to stop them on Sunday. So obviously we're going to come on to that and maybe look at other markets on the game, which potentially offer slightly better opportunities, I think.
Yes, we know that there's a lot of people watching here who've got outright tickets on the futures, mostly on PSG, I think. I don't think too many have ever mentioned back in Chelsea. But we're going to go through the match in detail, side props, things like that, angles. Mike came in early with a comment here. Is there any value left in the Club World Cup final? That's what we're going to find out here. But good to see you, Mike. Tristan Wiggle, Duncan Evans, Rick Haley, Ray Burke, Dave Clark, Steve from Lynn. Remind me to mention about the comment that was put on the show a few days ago there, James, about the 10,000 subscriber. Yeah. Real Brendan King. Dave Clark says PSG win and over 1.5. PSG win to 0, says Steve from Lynn. Ray Burke's getting involved in the Belarusian Cup final. Some interesting names in there. Real Brandon King, I can imagine that actually out there on the East Coast with these 3 p.m. kickoff times, midday kickoff times. That must be a bit weird, but I suppose you've got to cater to a worldwide audience, especially the European one. Dave Clark put Cucurella to get a car in PSG to win. I thought there was a prize on offer then for a minute, Dave, like a sort of a holding one in golf, but it's Cucurella be carded and doing that. But just going back to that, there was we reached our 10,000 subscriber live on air on Tuesday. It was a great moment, and thanks to everyone who has been subscribing. But there was an interesting comment afterwards. Steve Boyle. It was actually, sorry. My wife thinks she was the 10,000 subscriber, and I'm not going to argue with her. She wants a picture of James Eastham as a prize. So have I got to get hold of your agent here, James? For your signed, yeah. I thought,
well, do you know what, Steve? I was on the phone to Nigel Seeley, aka the boss, last night. We're having a good old catch up, and Nigel mentioned this to me because it was a show where Stephen made that comment that I wasn't involved in. And I thought it was a wind-up. I thought Nigel might be winding me up, but turns out it's true. And Stephen is looking for did he say signed photo or just a photo? I don't know.
We might as well sign it.
I'm very happy to sign it. But yeah, Stephen, if you're watching today and you want to sort that out, do get back in touch. We can definitely supply that. Whether or not you wear the 10,000 subscriber, as I say, I was off duty that day, so I can't comment on that. But whether you wear or you weren't, if you want the photo, we can arrange it. Yeah.
Tristan Wiggle is on about Chelsea using the. They have made, I think, over 80 million pounds in this tournament on prize money. That really is very useful for Chelsea. Real Brennan Kings enjoyed seeing the non-Euro teams. Villa fan, always good to see you. Thanks for the advice on the tournament. I have to say the handicapping team's been excellent. In the whole tournament. I tip my cap because we've really have been exceptional across the board. But Villa fans on about the rugby as well. Japan to beat Wales. Wales are awful in the rugby. I do know that. I don't follow rugby union, but I do know Wales are terrible at rugby. They were shocking in the Six Nations. There was even talk of, I think, Georgia replacing them in the Six Nations. That's never going to happen. But they are a poor team. Yeah, they're in a right hole, aren't they, Graz? The Welsh rugby, they are really bad. I'll tell you what, yesterday, just before we move on, I want to give a shout out to a couple of teams in the Conference League. Boruc Banjaluka, who we were talking about them on several shows this season. I think they reached the knockout round. Got beat at home 4-1 by a team from Andorra, Santa Coloma. And I think they were about 33-1 on the money line to win, and they won 4-1. Imagine their odds on the handicap. It would have been absurd. There was also a winner for a team from San Marino called Tre Fiori against Punic, and they were nearly 20-1.
Wow.
So, that double would have played well paid well, about 250 to 1, I think that would have been.
Mm.
But massive well done to those two teams. Never thought I would see an Andorran team and a San Marino team winning on the same day in the Conference League. But there were some good picks that I had yesterday in that competition. We're going to move now to the Club World Cup final. Here we go. Chelsea against PSG. PSG were minus 143 yesterday. They're now minus 167. Chelsea plus 430 to win. This is in 90 minutes. The ties at plus 310. And to actually lift the trophy is PSG minus 335 now, Chelsea plus 240. Both teams score yes at minus 167. And then, of course, we're on to the players. I thought at minus 143 yesterday that PSG would have been a bet. Because I priced this up. I'll tell you what, I priced this up, James, between minus 160 and minus 175. That's exactly where it is now for 90 minutes. So for me, moneyline odds, spot on. How do you see it?
Yeah, sounds about right to me as well. I don't have a pick or a play or a lean in that market because, like you, Steve, I think it's absolutely right. I think I have to say PSG have gone through this tournament more impressively than I expected. We didn't know going into it how seriously they were going to take it. Now, that's not to be disrespectful to PSG. We know what a supremely competitive bunch of players and manager they are. It was more almost a subconscious impact of the club having achieved what they've been trying to achieve for so long by winning the Champions League. Could they really dig deep and find something more for a tournament which is clearly less important to them over the last few years because it's not been around than the Champions League? Well, they have been absolutely formidable. I've been so impressed by the way they played. Just that one slip up in the group stage where they lost to Botafogo. If you put that to one side, some of their performances, the energy they've played with, the intensity they played with, the quality that we've seen from them, not just in that game against Real Madrid the other night when they won 4-0 in the semi-final, but you think about how comfortably they beat, a week into Miami side, but they still got the job done really impressively with that big first half performance. And in between those two games, there was a win over Bayern Munich, which was a really good quality performance as well. So I don't think you can argue with just how short PSG looked for a final. It's a bit shorter than maybe you would often see between two teams in a final, but I think it is reflective of just how strong this side are. You know, people are already talking about where do we rank them among the great one-season teams in Europe over the last 30 or 40 years, and can they go on and build a dynasty? So that's all sort of moving beyond the final on Sunday. But to bring it back to the game on Sunday, Steve, massive credit to Chelsea for getting this far. They have played well in patches, but I think the quality of this PSG side, their hunger and desire to add this to the Champions League they won on May the 31st, is enormous. So I can't see any reason to oppose them. Like you, I tend to think the odds now are probably correct. If they were minus 125, minus 130, it would look like a great opportunity. Probably not now at these odds, and probably not now to lift the trophy. But you'll have absolutely no argument from me about them being clear favourites because I think they've been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, they've been brilliant, and I kind of did expect it because I think they want to win the lot this year, and I think they'll be fired up for the Super Cup as well. Although I do actually think PSG in the league might start slower than normal.
Yeah.
There's a couple of fixtures. I'm looking way ahead here, but the likes of Nantes away, Toulouse away in August, that's the sort of places I could see them not covering the handicap sort of thing.
Yeah.
But they want to win as many trophies as they can at this point in time. And at the minute, I think there's night and day between Chelsea and PSG. I mean, Chelsea, you could probably say, are the fourth best team in the Premier League. That's the level they're at. PSG are the best team in the world right now. And I mean, they're just absolutely, Dave Clark made a very good point there. He's never seen Real Madrid get smashed like that. And it could have been 6 or 7. It really could. And they took their foot off the gas in the second half. They managed to rest some players. The likes of Dembele. Dembele, I mean, I've criticised him a lot, haven't I, on these shows? But Luis Enrique, I mean, has really found something with him. Forget his finishing for a minute. His actual work rate, and when he put him in the team, his positioning, he going into that lineup makes him an absolutely elite, the way he goes about his business. So
I think on Dembele, Steve, I think 2 things on that. Number one, 3 things really. Number one, nobody saw him as a centre forward. At any point in his career up until until January, when it really started, Nobody had seen him as a centre forward. Number 2, nobody knew he could press the way that he's pressing, which has been formidable. And number 3, the fact that he was injured through the group stage and has been used really sparingly. I think we saw in that semi-final against Real Madrid what an advantage maybe that is for him personally, because he looked really fresh in that game to me. He obviously scored the goal. We've seen comments from Thibaut Courtois, Real Madrid goalkeeper, after the match about how much Dembele pressed. I'm not saying he wouldn't be pressing if he'd played the entire tournament. He would. But I think the fact that he was injured and missed, he was almost out for a month, if you think about it, from the internationals for France at the beginning of June, where he picked up the injury and then came into this tournament injured. And as Luis Enrique has been really clever about taking his time to get him back in the team. He'll be one of the freshest players on the pitch in the final, will Dembele. So do take that into account in terms of whatever impact you think he might have on the game. You should be getting a really fresh version of him. So just for that conversion alone of Dembele to a centre forward, Luis Enrique deserves huge credit, because, like I say, it's a change and a transformation in that player that I don't think anybody else had seen.
No, Brad Bettsfooty's on about what is Dembele's biggest weakness. For me, still, it is when he has too much time. I still wouldn't hang my hat on him to score one-on-one every time, but he's getting a lot better at it. That finish against Real Madrid, that he wouldn't have scored that a year ago. He just wouldn't have done. That's confidence. That's the manager's been working on his technique, everything. Yeah. The manager deserves huge praise.
Yeah,
he's
amazing
best
job
in the world at the minute in that. But let's talk about some bets for the game then. Both teams to score market.
Yeah,
you're really interested in this one. Both teams score yes is -167, no +120. Dan Roebuck gave out a really good bet on this. Both teams to score no the other day against Real Madrid. +120 then for BTTS no here. That's what you like, isn't it?
Yeah, I really like it. I'll say exactly the same page as Dan Roebuck on this. I think that's way too big. I don't really understand why yes is -167 and no is +120, given that PSG have kept clean sheets in this tournament against Atletico Madrid, against Real Madrid, and against Bayern Munich. I just don't really understand why this market would suggest that Chelsea have got a really good chance of scoring goals. Also, we should say they kept a clean sheet against Inter Milan, that is, not Inter Miami, in the Champions League final. So I think +120 on both teams to score no on this game is a really good shout. It's not an official pick from me. I've got one on the game, which we'll come on to, but I think it's worth a lean. And I think if you are looking at this market, then no, certainly for me, looks far better value than yes, because it just seems that PSG's defensive ability is slightly underestimated by that price. Chelsea, they do have attacking weapons. They've scored fairly well in this tournament. We're going to come on to obviously the players that they've got in their likely starting lineup. Joao Pedro looked really sharp in that semi-final win, and he'll be a danger man if he starts. So there are attacking weapons in the Chelsea lineup, but we have a fairly strong track record now of PSG keeping clean sheets against really good opposition, and I think that needs to be taken into account here. Having said that, Steve, there is a linked market that I wanted to flag up if you are looking at PSG, Chelsea, both teams to score no. And that is, if you think PSG are going to win the game, or if you think they're going to keep a clean sheet, you can actually bet Chelsea under 0.5 goals at +155. So that's obviously not exactly the same bet, but it kind of is in a way, in that it's pointing towards PSG potentially keeping a clean sheet. So just make sure you have a look around at some of these linked markets. If there's a sort of a trend on the game that you think has been underrated, just make sure you check around. As I say, I think the chances of PSG keeping a clean sheet in normal time is slightly underrated here. And I think Chelsea under 0.5 goals at +155 would be one way to play it. Steve from Lynn making the comment there, PSG win to 0. Yep, absolutely would be another way of looking at it. It's all essentially saying the same thing about my prediction on how the game will play out. And that is that I think PSG have got a better chance of keeping a clean sheet than the market sort of suggests at the moment. So not an official pick from me, but I think both teams to score no at +120 looks like quite a big price.
Chelsea not to score at +155. I think that looks a really good bet. I mean, if that's near enough the same for me as both teams score no, because I don't see Chelsea keeping a clean sheet in the game. Look at this defense of Chelsea. You got Sanchez in goal. You wouldn't trust him, would you? Gusto on the right back, no way. The Colwell will come back. He's had a good season. I'm guessing Chalobah will be with him.
Probably, yeah.
Caicedo does have a knock. We think he's going to play, but he need to be 100% against PSG. Cucurella, I do think he's the strongest link of the back line, but that doesn't reek of a defense that's going to keep a clean sheet.
No, and we're gonna come on to all sorts of markets, but you mentioned Malo Gusto there. I'm quite a fan of Malo Gusto. I used to see quite a lot of him when he was in the Lyon Academy back in the day, but I think defensively, I'm not quite sure he's there yet as a player, and I think Kvaratskhelia up against Malo Gusto is going to be a really, really tough 90 minutes, if that's how long we have here for Malo Gusto. I mean, there's matchups all over the pitch, which we can talk about, but I think the PSG threat on the wings is, for me, a huge danger. They destroyed Real Madrid on the wings because they've got such quality from both players they have on the wings. Obviously, Nuno Mendes behind Kvaratskhelia, and then Hakimi behind probably Desiree Doué on the right-hand side. A real threat there. I tend to agree with you, Steve. I think Cucurella's got, I know he's not everybody's favourite fullback, but he has got high-level experience with Spain. He's used to taking on really strong wingers. I think on the other side, if it is Malo Gusto that starts over Reece James, I think that's going to be a real problem. And I think also the centre-backs, obviously Chelsea have had to change it around in the tournament with Colwell having that suspension. He comes back from that for this final. But Dembele being fresh, as I say, I think he's going to have real joy against the centre-backs, even if it's just from a pressing point of view and stopping them playing out the way they'd like. So, yeah, it's very hard for me to see Chelsea keeping a clean sheet. But as I say, at the other end, PSG's record now of keeping clean sheets is really strong. So Chelsea not to score at plus 155, it's quite a tempting play.
Just looking through some of the comments here now. Steve from Lynn says, I know I'll end up playing PSG minus 1.5. But he doesn't love it. He's going to be backing Dembele to score and Cucurella shot on target. Going back here. Thanks, Gary Mead. Good to see you. Watching in the US. Great show. Dave Clark says he's PSG scoring, then Chelsea getting stretched and PSG getting another goal on the counter. That could very well happen. Kruku makes an interesting point, actually, because I'm not sure about this. He mentions that Chelsea is the hardest opponent PSG will have in this tournament. He thinks PSG will win, but they might not win the handicap. I mean, I've got to disagree. So Atletico Madrid in the group stages, a fully fit Botafogo, Copa Libertadores champions who put in an incredible defensive performance. Chelsea are not going to be able to play like that in the group stage. Bayern Munich, who are loaded. Real Madrid.
Yeah.
How are Chelsea are not better than any of those. Maybe Botafogo, but I think on par with Atletico Madrid, Bayern and Real Madrid are definitely better than Chelsea.
Yeah, I think so, Steve, as well. I thought Bayern Munich was the toughest game that they faced, and I thought they handled it really well. I thought there was a real danger there for PSG. We talked about that on one of the shows where I previewed that, and I think PSG knew that was a real challenge for them. In a funny way, I think they were fairly confident against Real Madrid from the get-go, really, for various reasons. Whereas Bayern Munich, the individual quality of Elise, which we did see in that game in moments, I just think they knew it was a real test and that Bayern were going to play with good intensity and that, Bayern were really fired up for it because I think they felt they maybe could have done a bit better than they did in the Champions League. So, I disagree with that. I think Chelsea probably shouldn't be written off. There's quality and threats in that side which PSG will have to counter, but like you said at top of the show there, Steve, there's a big difference in quality here. And if Chelsea are the fourth best team in the Premier League, given what PSG did to Liverpool, who are the best team in the Premier League in the Champions League by knocking them out, I don't think they'll be particularly nervous about taking them on. They'll be respectful and they'll be prepping for it as fully as for every other game, but at the moment, I do think there's a big difference in quality here.
I do, though, agree with Kruku about playing Kvaratskhelia to score. He's going to be my main player prop angle in this game. We'll talk about him in a minute. Just going through a few other comments here. Chelsea over 3.5 shots on target is what Kruku likes. Brad Betts thought he makes an interesting comment about the XG in the Arsenal second leg. Arsenal were the best team, of course, in that match, according to Mikel Arteta.
Yes.
Debatable, but anyway, we are going to talk now about corners because, this is where this is your strongest pick on the game, right? Or your official play?
Yes,
that
it
you were
is.
saying, corners, James.
Yeah.
I love talking about corners now. I'm really into corners, so come on.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to go through this for the viewers because I think, having looked at all the prices on the game, I think the one area where the prices are, if you like, the most wrong, if we can use that word, are the corners market. And the reason I say that is various reasons. The first is that Chelsea have had more corners than their opponents in all three of their knockout games. So that's against Fluminense, against Palmeiras, and in normal time against Benfica. They had considerably more corners than Benfica in that last 16 game. So Chelsea have shown they can out-corner their opponents in this competition since we reached the knockout phase. If you look at PSG, it's the opposite. They've actually had fewer corners in their last two knockout games than their opponents. Real Madrid had more corners than them. Bayern Munich had more corners than them. PSG actually managed 0 corners in that game. PSG did have more corners than Inter Miami in the last 16, but I would sort of put that to one side. You can argue I'm maybe trying to cut my cloth here to support an argument, which would be fair enough. But I think Inter Miami is a slightly different case in that I don't think they're a particularly strong side compared to the other teams that both of these finalists have faced in the knockout stage. It's also worth pointing out that PSG had fewer corners than Inter Milan in the Champions League final. PSG had 4, Inter Milan had 6. So the point I'm making here is that even in games where they are utterly dominant and can play some fantastic football and win by really big margins, PSG don't necessarily win a lot of corners, and they don't necessarily stop the opposition from winning corners. I think the Real Madrid semi-final and the Champions League final against Inter Milan are the most instructive games in that sense, because we saw the degree to which PSG dominated. We've seen the winning scorelines that they were able to generate, and yet they've been out-cornered in those games. So the corners market's really interesting to me because PSG are clear favourites in this game to have the most corners. They're minus 190 at the moment in the most corners market. Chelsea are plus 180, and the tie is plus 575. So my main pick on the game would be to look at the corners market. I think the statistical trend on PSG is fairly clear. They're not necessarily winning as many corners as you might think for a team that are dominating an attack as much as they are. Now, why is that? In a way, you don't need to worry too much about it. As long as if you're following the stats, that's all that matters. But I think part of the reason is they're so good at getting behind the defense of the opposition that they're able to put in crosses which aren't necessarily going to be deflected for corners. They're actually able to pick out a man because they're getting the better of the opposition so frequently. If you think of how often Nuno Mendes, Kvaratskhelia, Hakimi are getting into good positions and able to pick out a man. So that might be the reason. But whatever the reason, I think opposing PSG as clear favourites in the corners market, for me, would be the best way to play on this final. It leads to 2 markets that I would recommend that people look at. The first is simply the most corners market. Maybe you want to back Chelsea at plus 180 there, or you might want to back the tie at plus 575. Alternatively, you could split your stakes across the 2 markets so that you make a profit whichever one of the 2 comes out on top. My main play on the game is actually Chelsea with a 2-0 start on the corners 3-way spread market. So the way this market works, for people who aren't familiar with it, Chelsea are essentially beginning with a 2-0 start in the corners market. And as long as they're still ahead at the end of the game, when you add on the real number of corners that the 2 teams have won, then you're going to have a winning pick. So essentially, Chelsea with a 2-0 start, given that I think they might win the most corners in the game anyway, I think is a really good way to play. That's available at minus 121. That would be my main pick on the game. Again, that's the 3-way spread market, corners 3-way spread. Chelsea with a 2-0 start, minus 121. But the broader point here, Steve, because people will want to look at it and maybe have their own markets that they like. The broader point is that PSG, as a dominant attacking force, are not necessarily winning the corners battles in games. And at the moment, I get the sense that the markets haven't really picked up on that. The fact they're such clear favourites here to out-corner Chelsea doesn't really reflect the way they've been playing over the last couple of months. So that would be my main pick on the game. It would be to try and find a way to oppose PSG here.
I mean, make some very good points there about the corners. Both teams are actually on my blacklist for corners. I've mentioned before about Chelsea, they just cut inside all the time. PSG are exactly the same, and they don't panic. PSG, they're like surgical precision. They won't just put crosses in willy-nilly. They'll go back and be patient if they need to, and
exactly, yeah,
they don't. And the Champions League final was a prime example of it. They win, what was it, 5-0?
Yeah.
And into we got on into most corners in play show. Because the game state dictates it. The most likely outcome here for me is a comfortable PSG win. I actually think they'll win something like 3-0. I've got to be honest. And if that's the case, then they won't need to push for corners. Chelsea also might actually play 4 set pieces in this game. It might be their best chance to do something.
It could be, and maybe try and pin them back. I'm not going to say they're going to play long ball, but try and sort of play almost over the midfield, where PSG are so good at recycling possession if they lose it. I think as well, if you look at the players on the wing, Kvaratskhelia on the left, he obviously prefers cutting in on his right foot. Desiree Doué on the right wing, he's not really a winger, in my view. He's doing a brilliant job in that right wing position, and he can play in several positions, but he's not a traditional winger in the sense that he's going to try and put in crosses all the time. The other thing about PSG, they're always backed up so well on those flanks with Nuno Mendes and Hakimi getting really far forward, that they do have that ball back that you're mentioning, Steve, about coming back inside. There's such great support that they'll try and find a way to play through rather than sort of just putting in a cross and hoping. And I think that is a factor. So at the moment, it's a weird one, because you normally do associate teams that are so dominant in an attacking sense with winning lots of corners, and it's not playing out that way at the moment with this PSG team.
Yeah, I mean, there's also a question, not a question, but Steve from them was saying low corners. He was thinking under 9. I'll tell you what, if this was the Champions League group stage game, I would definitely get on under corners. And I don't think there'd be maybe that many. It'd be close to the mark, actually, the line that's set. But because it's a final, I think you probably can't get involved with over-under corners, and apart from in play, because teams get desperate, situations can change. But if that was a regulation match in the Champions League group stage, yeah, I'd be, or even a knockout game, I would be on under corners. I don't think either team are huge for them. It's a big price, that plus 180 on PSG, most corners. The handicap, that's plus money as well, like you said. So, good luck with that play, James. We're going to move on to some player props now. And the man that I am personally targeting is going to be Kvaratskhelia, I think, to score or assist at minus 129 in this game. I'm going to go with that. I'm also looking at his shots on target over 1.5 at plus 114, and possibly his shots as well at either 2.5 to add to a same game parlay, or over 3.5 shots at plus 102. The only danger is, of course, if they are running riot rampantly 3-0 up again, and he will come off then on the hour mark, and Barcola will come on. Yeah. But I think the damage will be done by then. So in which case, for me, Kvaratskhelia to score or assist at minus 129 with Bet Rivers is the best player prop for me of the game. You mentioned the Gusto matchup. Even if it is Reece James, and Reece James will at some point play in this game, Reece James can't last 90 minutes. We know what his physical issues are. Yeah. And so at some stage, he will get a good chance to go at Gusto, really. But even Reece James, let's be honest, Kvaratskhelia is absolutely world class. He's going to give any right back. I can't think of the only player I think that could shut him down is his own man in his own team, Hakimi. Yeah. There's no one else.
There'll be a huge threat. I mean, I wonder if Chelsea are considering playing Malo Gusto and Reece James in tandem on the right wing. It's just my thoughts on the game, but I think if it were Christopher Nkunku on the right wing, who I quite like as a player in a 4-3-3, I'd be really worried defensively about Chelsea's right-hand side there. So you could talk about whether they'll play Reece James and Malo Gusto in a pair to try to give them a bit more defensive security. But you're right on Kvaratskhelia, Steve. I mean, he just seems to have boundless energy. He has made a big difference in terms of work rate, in terms of aggression in this PSG side since he came into the club in January. We saw him tracking back and winning the ball against Real Madrid, as he so often does. So he's going to be a huge threat, I think. And that left-hand side, I sort of feel the left-hand side might be more of a threat for PSG than the right-hand side. Desiree Doué's looked a little bit out of sorts to me in this tournament. I think I hope that's no criticism of him. He's had a phenomenal 6 or 7 months this year, and obviously was a key man in the Champions League final. But I just feel Kvaratskhelia on that left-hand side will be a big threat. in this game. So I completely see what you're thinking is there.
We're now going to talk left backs, because you've got some leans here for shots on target.
Yeah.
And we're looking at, say, both teams on the left backs here. Let's start with Cucurella, who's been, he's been a bit of a cash cow, really, hasn't he, throughout the tournament for a lot of bettors. And again, shot on target here, massive price. Yeah,
massive price. I wanted to flag him up. It's not an official pick from me, but for people who are looking at the shots on target market, Marc Cucurella is currently plus 360 to have a shot on target, which it looks a huge price if you consider how he's played in the tournament. He managed a shot on target in the quarterfinal. He managed a shot on target in the semi-final. So he's getting a lot of attention. A lot of people are flagging him up. And I am slightly surprised that his price has held up at so big as we're broadcasting now, with 2 days to go before the final. Maybe it will come in a little bit, but I think also it's down to the respect that PSG are getting. The feeling will be that Cucurella will do really well to get in into the sort of Anvaz positions he has in other games of this tournament, because he's probably going to be very occupied defensively. So that's partly why it's not an official pick from me. I do think it's a big price on him, given not just how he plays generally, but how he's played at this tournament. You'll have to consider how much time he's going to be able to commit to going forward, in your view, in a game like this, when he's got Desiree Doué and Achraf Hakimi to deal with on that flank, which is a thankless prospect, really, isn't it? But I wanted to mention it because I think, given how he's played, plus 360 is a big price. And then on the other side, Steve, you've mentioned we're looking at left backs here. I think Nuno Mendes in the shot on target market is also a fairly big price at plus 255. There's been a lot of talk about Hakimi and what a fantastic season he's had. He's done phenomenally well in terms of goals and assists for PSG. I personally think he should be a top 3 finisher in the Ballon d'Or for the season. We'll have to see if he manages to do that. It'd be quite unusual, wouldn't it, for a right back to finish so high? But he has been phenomenal. But I think from an attacking point of view, the fact that his stats have been so good has slightly overshadowed Nuno Mendes, in the sense that Nuno Mendes has not been as prolific, certainly in terms of goals. But if you actually watch how he's played at this tournament, he has been consistently looking to get into shooting positions. And although they've not always translated into clear sights of goal or shots on goal, in many ways, Nuno Mendes is just as focused on attacking on the left-hand side as Hakimi is on the right. So I think that Nuno Mendes, as always, is a much bigger price than Hakimi to have a shot on target. And I think plus 255 on Nuno Mendes in the shot on target market would be worth a look as well. So they're just 2 leans from me on the left backs. As I say, they're not official picks, but I think Cucurella at plus 360 and Nuno Mendes at plus 255 are worth considering.
And it is time to give Chelsea a little bit of love.
Yes.
On the show, because you've identified a couple of players in the shots on target market here who might be worth backing.
Yeah, I think the centre forward position for Chelsea is going to be fascinating, isn't it? Because they've got 2 players really who are competing for the number 9 shirt. There's Delap, who started the tournament and did pretty well, I thought. And then there's João Pedro, who's obviously come in and been the star of the show in the semi-final with the 2 goals that he scored. So it's likely to be one or the other in the centre forward position. They're almost identical prices in the shot on target market. Delap is minus 114. João Pedro is minus 115. My view on this, Steve, is that given that only one of them is likely to start, right? I mean, we're almost sure Chelsea are going to play a 4-3-3. So it's going to be either Delap or João Pedro in the number 9 position. Given that only one of them is likely to start, and that you would get refunded on any player that you back who doesn't start the game, I just wonder if you're looking at Chelsea, whether it's worth backing both Delap and João Pedro in the over 0.5 shot on target market, because I think the fact they're the same price is fair. They both contributed in this tournament. And I actually think that they're going to be a threat, are Chelsea, from that number 9 position, because we've said it several times about PSG. We said it in the Champions League knockout stage. We've said it in this tournament. despite the fact they've kept clean sheets, they do sometimes give up chances. We saw that against Liverpool in the Champions League. We've seen that in other knockout games where they've relied on Donnarumma. And I just wanted to flag that up. I think that the number 9 position for Chelsea will be really important in this game for them. I think that the competition between Delap and João Pedro for that position means that whoever starts will be looking to have a big impact. I wanted to also mention that William Pacho will be suspended for PSG. He's missing 2 games. He missed the semi-final and he'll miss this game. His replacement, Lucas Beraldo, actually didn't play badly, I thought, in the semi-final against Real Madrid. But I think that long-term, if you look at Beraldo over the season, I don't think he is as good as William Pacho. So I think maybe a slight vulnerability for PSG in the central defensive position. And that's possibly, if Chelsea are going to have any joy in the final third, where I think they will have some joy. So again, it's not an official pick for me. It's just a lean, but I think Chelsea's number 9, whichever one of the 2 it is that starts, whether it's Delap or João Pedro, and I'm thinking it will be them. I mean, it might be a surprise that Maresca picks someone else, Nicholas Jackson, or plays someone as a false 9. But if it is Delap or João Pedro, I think a lot of the joy that Chelsea have in the final third will be in that central number 9 position.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And João Pedro, of course, came in, made an instant impact. Interesting player. For me, yes. I don't know what to make of him, because I feel like at times he's a flat track bully. But sometimes he can just go missing. I don't know whether he's going to do that well at Chelsea overall or not. The jury's out, but we do know he had a great start, and he's a confidence player. I'd start him, I think, if I was the manager, just based on that. But
well, this is it, Steve. I was having exactly that thought process before I came in. What do you do if you're Maresca and you've had a Delap who's looked pretty good when he was playing and fit, but when you've got a guy who scored not only 2 goals in the semi-final, but 2 really good goals, I think it's very difficult to drop him now, isn't it? So I would expect him to start. And I think, as I say, on the back of the form that he showed in that semi-final, he will probably, if he does start, be the main threat. So that's why I think these prices just have over 0.5 shots on target, we should say, not to score, but, minus money, but minus 114, minus 115, that sort of price. It's fairly appealing to me.
Paul Hughes, good to see you. The Insider is out. For those, I mentioned this yesterday, to sign up in your inbox. It came out a little bit later than I expected, but the Open Championship preview is now out there for those who've signed up for free. This is something, we have 2 newsletters a week. There were, again, several winners on the Monday edition that came out. And like I said, this is a really, really nice Open Championship preview. But do sign up if you're new to the show. Sign up for free to the Betting Weekly newsletter twice a week. And I think next week it might be the French Liga season preview coming out. We've got some early season previews that are coming out. I think next week is the one. Correct. You, of course, have had a big part in preparing that. And I'm just going to, before we go, talk a little bit about futures odds on PSG for the Champions League and stuff. But I think we've covered this Club World Cup final now. Was there any other market you wanted to talk about, James, that I missed? No,
that's everything. As I say, for me, the corners market is the one that offers the most opportunities. As I said in the sort of analysis of it, I think PSG are overrated and Chelsea potentially underrated. But like you, Steve, I think the price on PSG in the match odds, the price on PSG to lift the trophy, both absolutely fair. They are clear favourites here, and it would be a huge shock if they don't win the Club World Cup on Sunday.
Yeah, for me, it would be a big shock as well. And I'm absolutely not hedging. I'm letting my 8-1 ride, which I took at half-time in the Champions League final. And I watched back, actually, the live show, and there was 3 different occasions we did say, people, look at getting on PSG for this Club World Cup as soon as you can. And I do know I've had messages. We've had people come up in the comments who did manage to get on PSG, certainly at minimum 5 to 1, 6 to 1, if not more. So there's some. If you need to hedge, do it. This is a great chance to hedge if you've got a massive position on them. I wouldn't blame anyone, but just for me, I'm so confident they'll win the trophy that I'm not going to be doing it. Some breaking news today is that Crystal Palace have been demoted to the Conference League due to the ongoing situation with Lyon now reinstated. We're already kind of looking ahead towards these competitions. PSG are the favourites to win the Champions League next season at 5 to 1. Now, I'm really interested to see how how it goes for them next year. I said on yesterday's show, I actually think from August through maybe Christmas, I'm not sure they'll be at their best, And I think they'll time it again to try and peak in the second half of the season. You can't deny that they deserve to be favourites to win the competition again, though, next season, James.
No, I think it's absolutely fair that they are. And I think the question at PSG will be, how do we not really improve? Because I honestly don't think they can improve. How do we maintain this level? What do we do to stay at the level we've hit in the last 6 months? So I think they absolutely do deserve to be favourites. I think a lot of what they'll be thinking about is not so much new signings, because it's very difficult to see where you can improve this side. It will now be to do with management of these players who've had such a long season. Let's not forget how long it's been. They're going all the way to mid-July here. Yes, a lot of people are talking about what a young side they are. Well, first of all, they're not all young. Marquinhos isn't young. There's one or two other players who've been useful. Fabian Ruiz in midfield isn't that young either. So I think it'll be about managing the players. And you're absolutely right. I think Luis Enrique, although he likes full throttle football, he'll be fully aware that if they try and go through the entire 2025-26 season playing the type of football he would like to see every single time they play, they are probably going to fall short. So let's see how they manage it. I think I agree with you, Steve. I think we mentioned this before on the show. I think the opening 4 or 5 match days in League One will be really interesting. Will he be playing his strongest side? I personally don't think he will. I think he'll manage their minutes really carefully during the first 3 or 4 months of the season. So that's not to say that PSG are going to slip up. It's not to say that they're going to lose ground at the top of the League One table. But I don't think there's any reason why they will feel they need to be super dominant in League One. Moving on to the Champions League, let's not forget they didn't really impress in the group stage last season, did they? They were really poor when they lost away to Arsenal. I think it was October 2024, and they dropped points in other games. So I think what that tells PSG is, you can peak at the right time and win this trophy. You don't have to be the best team, in the group stage like Liverpool were. So yes, I think they deserve to be favourites. I don't think anybody who's watched them in the last 6 months can argue with that. As I say, I think it's now going to be about managing their minutes through from now, or when the new season starts, through to the end of the year. And I don't know, maybe their price will be a bit bigger to win the Champions League at some point, because as I say, I wouldn't be surprised if they're not super dominant in the group stage. If other teams are, maybe that will affect the market a little bit. Let's wait and see. But I certainly can't argue at the moment with PSG being favourites to retain the trophy. We know that's a difficult thing to do for a lot of clubs, but they've been so far ahead of everybody else at this tournament. And they looked it, other than maybe Barcelona, who of course missed out on the final during the knockout phase of the Champions League, that right now, I think clear favouritism is really the only way you can price them up.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I really do think that's fair. Just going back to some points here about Palace, everyone having quite a bit of sympathy with them. What's going to happen, Tristan, is Nottingham Forest are going to go to the Europa League. They're promoted up to the Europa League, Forest and Palace, into the Conference League. That is pending appeal, of course. They will have a right to appeal this before the Court of Arbitration for Sport. But honestly, I think Palace will be better off in the Conference League. I think they'll have a great chance of winning it. Duncan Evans puts that. It is a stronger Conference League next season in terms of overall. The teams in there, we've got Fiorentina at the minute, Crystal Palace, Rayo Vallecano, Mainz, Strasbourg, the likes of AZ Alkmaar in there, Sparta Prague, Rapid Vienna. So it's not a gimme, but I think they'll have a better chance of winning the Conference League than they would the Europa League.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Personally. But James, it was an absolute pleasure as always.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thanks for a great breakdown on the game. And you're definitely going to be back next month. Throughout August, me and you are going to be doing Europa League and Conference League qualifying.
Yes.
On a Thursday. So,
yes.
Get your research in for these Andorra teams if they're still in there.
Yeah. Oh, really looking forward to it, Steve. I mean, it feels like a long way off, and yet not a long way off. Obviously, you've mentioned the qualifying for some of the European competitions for next season has already started. So there's going to be a little bit of a break after Sunday and the Club World Cup, and then back into the competitive action on the Thursday show, as we did last season. So really looking forward to getting involved again.
Hughes, I mean, I don't think it should impact any of the Palace players, because, not being funny, right? is there really a huge difference between Europa and Conference League from the player's perspective, trying to win a trophy? You know, from a money perspective, yes, it is the prize money and stuff for the club, and that is worth more. But I think they could win that. I really do think they could win that competition if they're in it. It's a blow though, because by rights, by the rules of last season, they qualified for the Europa League. So that's the disappointment. They will appeal. I think it's wrong if Girona and Man City can be in the same competition as each other. It's a mess, isn't it? It's a real mess. We'll see how it goes. That's an ongoing storyline. But thanks everyone who watched Betting Weekly live this week. Remember, as they sign up to that newsletter for next week, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We want to get to 11,000 subscribers now.
Yeah, absolutely.
The likes have been really racking up. Really appreciate everyone who's been supporting. Watch out for Betting Weekly Hardbreak and the Hardball and Fast Break coming up later on the show. And next week, we're going to have on Wednesday an Open Championship preview. Neil Channing is going to be with Simon Holden and Dan on the Wednesday. Brilliant. And Simon's going to be on the show Monday too. So have a great weekend, everyone. Gamble responsibly. Hit those winning tickets. Come on, PSG. Let's get a big win. See you around, James. Take care.
Cheers.